Shalom, it's Reuben Ebrahimoff, the Haftorahman, with this week's Haftorah. The Parsha, the Torah reading, is from the Parashat VaYeishev. It is a story that includes how Joseph was thrown in the pit and then eventually sold out to some Midianites en route to Egypt. What was he sold out for? It says for shoes, that the brothers got paid a pair of shoes in order to let their brother be taken away. So the men of the Great Assembly, Anshe Knesset Agdolah, they had to pick a story with a similar theme. So what did they pick? They picked the story from the book of Amos. The famous Amos? No, not the cookie man, the prophet. And when did he live? He lived about 2,750 years ago. Where did he live? He prophesied up north. There were two cities of Tekoa. One of them where the oil factory was in the Maccabean story, and this was another city, I believe that it was located up north. Regardless, his prophecies talked about the northern tribes, the 10 northern tribes. So, his name means bearer of burden, or someone who was difficult to speak. Now, they don't know if it was a speech impediment or impediment, or whether it just was hard for him to have to say these things to people because he had to warn them and scold them, and he had a tough life like that. He was very wealthy. He had herds, Hanokadim or Nukuda or points was the name of the animals. They said, the spotted ones. And he had also sycamore trees that they would get dates, honey from. So he was a successful guy. And his book, Amos, comes from the volume of the Treyasar, or the 12 in Aramaic. In English, it was translated as the Minor Prophets. I said there was nothing minor about this man. It was just that he got his message across succinctly. So they compiled these 12 men into a single book. So here we go. The Haftorah begins with Bnei Israel, the nation of Israel, being urged to listen to the prophets. That first you had the Torah, and then God turned things over to the messengers of God, these 55 recorded prophets. And Amos is telling these 10 northern tribes, whoa, you got to stop what you're doing. Listen, you're doing 3 things, God is already up to here, but this 4th thing, that's it. What were the 3 things? He says, number 1, adultery, 10 commandments. Number 2, idolatry, 2 out of the 10. And now, murder. Guys, that's not okay. But that wasn't the tipping point. The tipping point, according to the Midrash, it's not in the text. According to the tipping point, it was that the men were paying off the judges, bribing the judges. What happened? The widow had no money. She had no revenue stream. So they would take advantage of her, and then they would go pay off the judges, and she would never get a fair trial. Why was God so upset? Because God is the one that decides people's future, destiny. Yes, we have to do mitzvot, and hopefully we have a symbiotic relationship. But, you know what? God said, if you're going to play God, then you got to play it straight and fair. You can't pay off judges. That's it. When you become the authority, do it correctly. So that was the first warning that was given about how they're treating, these people are treating poor people. He says these people at the time were competing for who could be the most disgusting God and who could do the biggest Aveirah of the sin. It said, for example, for bachelor parties, the father and the son would go to the bachelor party together. They were shameless. It says, listen, guys, you have to do what's right. You are my chosen people. You have to be holy. I dealt with the Amori nation. They're gone. I don't want to have to send you out of the land of Israel, is how God speaks via Amos. And he says, listen, look at you. Look at your spiritual potential. You have prophets. You have Nizirim. You have people that are holy men. But the prophets are being told not to speak my word. And the Nazir, the men that made the special extra effort not to drink wine, not to cut their hair, they're telling them, go ahead and drink wine. Don't do that, he says, because you're going to be punished. And it continues that why is Hashem dealing so strictly with these people? Because he says, it is you that I knew. It is you that I chose as my nation. You cannot behave this way. How does it look to the rest of the world? So they are urged to listen to what the prophets have to say. Are people listening to the people who say, listen to me? Do you know who I am? They don't listen. He says, listen, the Aryeh, when it roars, they listen. These Navi, these prophets are roaring. How come you're not listening? And that if a bird gets caught in a trap, doesn't the bird say, I'm stuck? And God is saying, listen, don't you understand these messages that I'm giving you, that they're telling you? Like a shofar is blown, you hear on Yom Kippur. After Yom Kippur, you hear on Rosh Hashanah. People listen to it. They think, you guys are not listening. You have to listen to the Nevi'im. These are men that meditate and women that meditate. They get messages from God. And the message is, you have to focus on one God. You cannot worship two gods and three gods to hedge your bets. The idea is, do not look outside for money, power, friends, ego. You're a Jewish person. You have to have dignity. You have to conduct yourself nicely. And you have to be a light unto the nations. They're looking at you. Set the right example. Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy the Haftarah.